Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I want to congratulate firstly the Honourable Member for Newark and others for securing this important debate, and join my other colleagues in saying there's absolutely no place for the vile and anti-Semitic abuse that him and his family have faced. I also want to thank the Honourable Member for Beckenham for his really moving account of the horrors that he witnessed while serving in Bosnia, and thank the Honourable Members for West Bromwich and the Honourable Member for Bath, and of course my honourable friend for West Ham, for sharing the stories of others, which is very, very important, I think, if we're going along with the message that never again. But it's a particular honour and privilege to participate in such an important debate following the moving speeches of my honourable friends for Warrington and Leeds East. Holocaust Memorial Day is a time for us to remember and reflect upon some of the most horrendous and atrocious acts committed by mankind. We reflect on the harsh conditions forced upon those who under Nazi ideology and eugenics were deemed as secondary beings or subhuman. We remember the 6 million Jews who were targeted and murdered by a fascist regime which used vile anti-Semitism to justify and legitimise their cruel treatment of millions of innocents. And we must not forget the millions of others who were murdered under this regime, millions of Soviet civilians and prisoners of war, Roma and Sinti people, Polish, Serbian and Slovenian citizens, LGBT people, the disabled and so many more. It's important for us to reflect on the anti-Semitic propaganda and lies that were peddled to justify what was one of the biggest atrocities in our modern history, because we are currently seeing the situation where anti-Semitism, hate speech and hate crimes continue to rise internationally, and in particular across Europe. In Europe, more than 1 in 4 Jewish people have experienced anti-Semitic harassment at least once, and almost half have expressed they are worried about being subjected to anti-Semitic verbal insults or harassment. Not so long ago, in June 2019, Vivian Watt pointed out that for each of the previous 3 years, the UK had reported the highest number of anti-Semitic incidents ever recorded, and in France, with the world's 3rd biggest Jewish population, records showed a 74% spike in anti-Semitic acts between 2017 and 2018. And in Germany, anti-Semitic incidents rose more than 19% than the previous year. We cannot kid ourselves into believing that anti-Semitism was just a problem of the early 20th century. It's very much present in today's society, it is on the rise, and it must be stamped out. Yeah. As a Holocaust survivor, Primo Levi wrote, "If understanding is impossible, knowing is imperative, because what happened could happen again." The Holocaust Memorial Trust and the Holocaust Educational Trust do such great work and make many, many efforts to ensure that we also use this day to remember the other atrocities that occurred through the 20th century in Cambodia, Rwanda, Darfur, and so many others. The importance of remembering these tragedies and recognising the vile ideology that sought to justify them cannot be understated. Failure to do so risks these tragedies occurring again. And unfortunately, it seems that we're failing to learn the lessons of these past atrocities, because as we sit here today, millions of people across the globe are still subjected to targeted campaigns of persecution, violence and genocide. Uyghur Muslims are being systematically targeted, and Rohingya Muslims are persecuted in Myanmar in what has led to the creation of the world's largest refugee camp. The Saudi coalition against Yemen, which has led to widespread famine and was just last year described as the world's biggest humanitarian crisis. And in Ethiopia, we are seeing the warning signs of genocide as Tigrayans are being murdered, raped, tortured and displaced by ongoing conflicts. We've seen time and time again what happens when prejudice, bigotry, xenophobia and racism are left unchecked, allowed to fester, and worse, installed in power. And we cannot be complacent with the ever-rising levels of bigotry and in all forms of racism that we're seeing closer to home. It's crucially important that we proactively condemn the far-right ideologies that are rearing their head in the UK and across Europe, and peddled by regimes who seek to legitimise the heinous acts that we've seen in the past and are still witnessing today. And when we see far-right extremism being peddled on our own shores, and we see anti-Semitic and racist hate crimes increasing, we must recognise this for what it is. We must stamp it out immediately. We must address it, and we must always recommit ourselves to saying never again.